I want to get in the weeds here and ask you. So your first line maybe in the movie is that sound. Was that you or was that added in post? Was that actually
That
you?
was me. I was in the car, yeah.
Okay. Which was fit. But that screeching sound, because I guess your translator wasn't working at that.
Yeah, my translator was broken. In the script, they called it, the sound comes out like a baby in a bagpipe, which is the best description. So I did. At the time, I think I sucked in. I can't really do it anymore. So now when I do it like 4 people, I go, which is, yeah.
Exploring life's journey, one story at a time. This is Trailheads with Jim Barrett. Today's guest is a true scene stealer. Galaxy Quest, Dodgeball, Big Fish, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Oscar-winning Best Picture, The Artist, and so many others. She brings something unforgettable to every role. It's the incredibly talented Missi PYLE. We'll talk about her Hollywood journey and the stories behind her larger-than-life on-screen and off-screen moments. So Missi PYLE, thanks so much for joining me on Trailheads. I appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you taking the time, Jim.
Indeed. Indeed. So Trailheads, my sort of brand is that getting outdoors has always kind of been my go-to for mental health. Do you have something like that you've done over the years to connect with nature in some way?
Yes. I mean, for me, I've always dealt with depression and anxiety. And for me, running was the thing for many, many, running and hiking. And I ran several marathons. My friend Brooke and I, who also suffers from depression, we would actually run marathons. We ran marathons. So we would go train. We would set a day, like we're going to run this marathon in 6 months. And then every Sunday we would do our runs, then we'd add more miles. And that was extremely therapeutic for both of us. We did it for several years and then we still ran. But I tore my labrum, my cartilage. So I can't do that. I couldn't do it anymore. And it was devastating.
Yeah.
And I literally just got a hip replacement, and I don't know that I'll be able to run again, but I do hike a lot, and that does save me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I started a hiking group in LA in 2020, right before the pandemic. So we had a few months under our belt before the governor made us stop, and then we violated the order and continued to hike. And when we moved away because I'm in Atlanta now, it continues. So when we come back to visit family and stuff, we still go with that bunch. So that's good to hear, though. That I'm glad to hear whenever other people have gone outdoors for their mental health. Fun fact about you and me is that we were both born and raised in Houston and then moved to Memphis, Tennessee when we were about 13. So
Why did you move when you were 13?
Yeah. And I went kicking and screaming because I don't know about you, but for me, that's all the friends I had were there and some extended family. So I was really bummed. But then thank God we did because we both have the same mentor who was the director of the theater and TV department at our high school, Germantown, outside of Memphis. Did that shape your career coming up?
Of course. I mean, he was extremely influential in my life. When I was at Germantown Middle School, I kept seeing the Poplar Pike Playhouse signs because people would come and poster them. And I didn't know that was the theater department for the high school, which I just loved that they had a name for the theater. And everything in that department really stretched you as an individual in so many ways, and I was sort of doing some sports as well. And they really wanted me to be a basketball player, but I was told I wasn't allowed to do both. I wasn't even allowed to have a job, but I had to have one because my parents were like, you have to have a job.
Yeah.
So I did it all, but it was like nothing I've ever been to. And then I ended up going to North Carolina School of the Arts for college. And I remember the freshman year just thinking, oh, this is way easier than Germantown High School.
What was the first musical that you did at Germantown? Was it a musical or was it a play?
Yeah, I did No, Nanette was my first one. I think I was on the makeup crew for The Mystery of Edwin Drood.
Okay.
I did an audition for it because I think I had to do basketball.
You remember what it was like for you to be on stage for the first time there? So your first on-stage role was at Germantown? You didn't do it before?
I remember my first audition. That's what I remember the most. And it was and they danced real slow in Jackson. I ended up getting the part. I think because I had braces. I mean, that was it was like everything had to be, that was one of the reasons. But I remember the feeling of like standing there and auditioning for Mr. Bluestein and being like, having that moment where I was like, wow, this is like nothing I've ever felt before.
And then I went into the woods to get my wish and now I'm ordinary.
Just feeling feeling like, wow, just to inhabit like another person so blew me away. And I felt like I was kind of inhabited by somebody else. Like I'd never done something like that before. And it was so extraordinary.
But now since I am still light, I'm good by then, I'm good by night. So blow Gabriel.
Then you were hooked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I ended up doing, my first show was No No Nanette. I played Betty from Boston. I was like, I wanna be, or something, It's very broad.
That's awesome. So we met through this high school that we both went to. It had a very active alumni organization, and we probably met right at the alumni banquet one year because every Christmas, Hanukkah, they would have a get together because people from out of town were back in town to visit family. Because you graduated a few years after I was there.
91. I graduated.
91. Okay.
And
So,
yeah,
talk a little bit more about the PPP was the abbreviation for the Poplar Pike Playhouse, which is kind of fun to say. Talk a little bit more about how Frank Bluestein sort of mentored you into this.
I was a kid, a young person. When I auditioned that first time, he sort of demanded you to do the best you could. It wasn't even a question. And I think it was a little bit like I was afraid not to, but I loved like how much I stretched myself in all of those areas. I wasn't great at television and film. That wasn't really my thing. I was much more involved in the theater, but I did do like a roving. I was like the roving reporter. And I remember once I used footage from like 10 years before, and he was like, Missy, my name was on the board. Remember he had that board? And it was like Missy Pyle. It was like, Missy Pyle, you can't use footage from 10 years ago for your roving report about today. He expected so much of us. He did not treat us like high school kids.
Right.
He just didn't. We were like human beings that were there to do a job. Well, what's really interesting? Every year they would do a play and then a musical, play, musical, play, musical. So the first year I auditioned was in the Dance for Sloan Jackson, then I did No No Nanette. Junior year, we were going to do a play that ended up being like a little too risque. So then he decided to do You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and I wasn't in it. And then we did Into the Woods that year. And then my senior year, we did 2 musicals. We did a fall play musical, which was Trixie True Teen Detective, and I played this German crazy woman and also an author. And then we did Anything Goes, and I played Reno Sweeney. And I did all these musicals. So all of my first acting were these sort of big, broad characters. And I want to say that part of what I think I came into my career with was the ability to be these like sort of larger than life people, which I'm sure that influenced like the trajectory of the characters that I ended up being cast in.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then I went to the North Carolina School of the Arts, and George Downer was there, and Kate Chilcote was there, and it was really
And our own Chris Parnell had gone there a couple of years before.
Now I had gone there before.
Pardon me if I'm just ignorant of some of the roles, because I know that you were on Broadway too, for a couple of shows.
I did, yeah. I did one Broadway show and one off-Broadway show.
Okay.
I didn't do Broadway, and I graduated from School of the Arts in 95. At the end of 95, I got this part in a play called The Libertine at Steppenwolf, and I played John Malcovich's wife.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So scary. I had literally been out of school for like 3 months.
Yeah.
When I got this part, and moved to Chicago and did that. And then I did a couple plays in New York that were just sort of smaller things. And I auditioned for all kinds of stuff. I didn't work really at all, other than a little bit of theater and a little bit of commercials until 1999. Like I just was auditioning, counting. I would go on like 8 auditions a day sometimes because there were a lot of commercials. There were voiceovers. There were industrial commercials. There were plays. There was TV and there was film. And it was just, I was constant. And then I'm waiting tables at night, so like, and I had, of course, had a dog. I just have always been like needing to fill every single second of my life, which is part of my own ADHD, which I didn't even know I had for years. I don't think anybody really did, but I don't think it was diagnosed as much unless it was really apparent. I was engaged and I moved to LA for pilot season. No, just to try out LA. And then I got the movie Galaxy Quest. That really started things off.
Well,
even though I didn't work for a year after I got it.
How you doing? Okie dokie.
Actually, before that, when you were talking about waiting tables for a time, was it therapeutic for you then to do As Good as It Gets? Because that was actually, if you scroll back in
Yeah,
your IMDb, it was
that's
one of the
right.
first ones, right?
Yeah, I actually auditioned for James Brooks in New York and ended up getting a part as one of the waitresses. I have like 2 lines, and it was amazing. And they flew me out, but I had to put myself up. So they hired me as a local and like rent my own car. But it was incredible to be on stage with, just to be in set with Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt. And at one point, Helen had to leave because she was doing Mad About You at the time. And James Brooks was like, Missy, can you stay and do her off camera with Jack?
Wow. How,
Yeah, I'd
how
be
was
okay with
that?
that. Sure. And I remembered acting with him and the way he talked to me. It was just like because they were having kind of a fight, or she was like, don't. It was
Yeah.
one of those scenes where he was talking shit. Um, and then I couldn't, but like it just, he kind of, and then I went out by a dumpster and cried. I was like, wow. It's cool.
What an incredible kind of first, because that was your first kind of big break, right? Chronologically.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was necessarily a big break. It didn't really lead to much. I would say Galaxy Quest was kind of my big break, even though I didn't work for like a year right after that. But I kept auditioning for, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, will I ever have a big break? There was a moment where it was really much easier. After I did Josie and the Pussycats, I did Bringing Down the House. And then right after that, I did Soul Plane. And then I did Dodgeball. And then I did Harold and Kumar. And I did like a Lindsay Lohan movie, Just My Luck. And then I did Along Came Polly. And they were all these studio movies like in a row. They were like 8 in a row.
Mm.
And it was really something. And then I met this guy on a low budget movie and decided I was going to move to Montana, and then I didn't work for a very long time.
Well, let's go back to Galaxy Quest, because another little fun, me being friends with you for years is that we ran into each other at Ralph's in, I think, Studio City, right after we finished shooting Galaxy Quest. It hadn't come out yet, but I remember you were like, Jim, you're like a Trekkie, right? And yeah. Well, I just did this movie that's kind of like a bit like Star Trek, and I think it's going to be pretty good, because you were saying to me, sometimes you can't tell when you're in the movie if it's going to end up good. You remember that?
Yes, and I would say too that because it was all these amazing actors. I mean, it was like Tim Allen, who's in his own right, he's perfectly cast. And I think was it supposed to be someone like somebody else was supposed to direct it? Harold Ramis was going to direct it, and then when they got Tim Allen, he said, "I'm not doing it." But I think that Tim Allen, because he's that TV star, who's kind of like, hey, and just to play that has-been stuff in the drunk, and he's been he did a great job, I thought.
Please, Commander, you are our last hope.
And then Sigourney Weaver, obviously, who's incredible, and then Tony Shalhoub and
The late great Allan
the
Rickman.
late great Alan Rickman, who literally ate lunch with us every day, which none of the other big stars did. They all went straight to their trailers, but Alan would just come have lunch with all the Thermians, and we would hang out, and he was the best.
That's cool.
So great.
I feel like Rainn Wilson, it was one of his first parts too, I think. He wasn't
Yeah, and
really
he,
yet.
Rainn was there from the very beginning, and he was supposed to have maybe a bigger part, and then he got another job. He was supposed to come with us. No, in the limousine. Is he in the limousine?
He is in the limo, but it seemed like
I guess when we got there, he wasn't there.
I want to ask you while we're talking about the limousine, I want to get in the weeds here and ask you. So your first line maybe in the movie is that sound. Was that you, or was that added in post? Was that actually you?
Me. That was
Okay.
in the car, yeah.
Okay. Which is fit. But that screeching sound, because I guess your translator wasn't working at that.
Yeah, my translator was broken. In the script, they called it the sound comes out like a baby in a bagpipe, which is the best description for. And so I did. At the time, I think I sucked in. I can't really do it anymore. So now when I do it for people, I go, which is, yeah. And I was just at a convention with Enrico Colatoni and Jed Reese and Patrick Brain. So we were all together. just it was so dumb, just making stupid noises and laughing that it's been 26 years.
That's amazing. That's
They were
amazing.
all people still care because the movie didn't do very well opening weekend, but it had like legs. It just kept making money, and I don't think they knew what they had, so they made it PG instead of PG-13. They thought maybe it was a kids movie instead of a wonderful satire.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I have some intersections with some real Star Trek people, and they talk about that this subject came up, and they loved especially the Next Generation cast, just loved that movie. I think William Shatner was a little offended. Well, I don't think they're making fun of me. Not at all. Why would you say that? But the Next Generation people totally got it and thought it was hilarious. You heard that? Have you met any of those folks at the conventions?
I have met a couple of people. The people I usually meet are like the bigger people don't come to the conventions
Okay.
that I go to.
Okay. Well, we went to DragonCon here, which is I think it's the second biggest convention in the US. Comic-Con, of course, is the big one, but DragonCon, and we met my wife Elisa loves Christopher Lloyd, so we met him, and right next to Christopher Lloyd was Billy Zane. Did Galaxy Quest open that door for you to sort of meet your fans in
Yeah.
person like that? Yeah. How is that?
Absolutely. Oh, it's great. I mean, it's never been super crazy. Because I did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Dodgeball as well. Like I have kind of 3 movies that everybody really knows. And then there's a bunch of like little ones here and there that other people are kind of like, they'll be like Josie and the Pussycats was my childhood. But now, of course, it's because we've been doing it for a while. It's sort of the people that I meet who are like, are in their 30s. And they're like, that was my childhood. It was interesting to be at this last convention because there were a bunch of kids there for K-pop Demon Hunters and some other things, and they were much younger, and they have no interest. They have no interest in us. But they're interested in, like, going and dancing and doing, like, little things and, like, having, like, I don't know, like a K-pop rave and lip syncing and dancing.
Right.
Get out the map and lay your finger anywhere down.
My wife and I recently watched Glitter and Doom, which we loved. We thought it was beautiful, and it was really because you really did some heavy singing in that one.
Remember everything I told you.
How was that for you? How did you enjoy that one?
I loved that one. I mean, who doesn't want to sing the Indigo Girls? Like, it's just a dream.
I went to the doctor. I went to the mountains.
The musical director was this woman named Michelle, and she had been on The Voice, but she's this brilliant Michelle Chamuel. But she made these incredible arrangements. And so it was amazing to sing all these songs and then to hear like the 2 boys singing all the songs. And we shot in Mexico City, and we actually sang the songs while we were filming, and they recorded them. And they kind of they went back and forth and used some of the stuff from the actual recording, from my understanding, and then some that we did in the studio.
We just loved it because it was a rock opera. It had great music in it.
As the fear becomes a roar.
And for those who don't know, Glitter and Doom, it's basically the music of the Indigo Girls that was shaped into a musical with the story of these 2 young men falling in love. And you played the mom of one of them who's the character's having a real hard time. And it just had such a heart and soul to your performance.
Well, it's basically the 2 guys who made it. It's the writer director. The writer wrote it as their partners and have been for 20 years, and he wrote it as like a love letter to his partner. And so it was basically their stories, sort of, but filmed in Mexico City. It's gorgeous. I mean, I thought the choreography was astounding. The costumes, like when I got there, I went in for a costume fitting and they made everything that I wore. We were dealing with the best people in Mexico City, the best costume designers. It was extraordinary.
Audience, if you haven't seen Glitter and Doom, figure out where it is and check it out. I think it's on Amazon. But it was a really nice surprise. And your character had such grit, and just the music was fantastic, and you were on point. It was really fun.
Thank you, Jeff.
So you just recently celebrated a pretty remarkable birthday. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I got sober. I celebrated my 2-year sobriety anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I quit drinking in like over 3.5 years ago, that was the thing that I was having the trouble with. But for total, like everything, the minutia of sobriety was 2 years on Sunday. And yeah, for me, I used alcohol to slow down, to put myself to sleep, to not think or feel, so it never cost me a job that I know of. I never went to work drunk or anything like that, but I could feel it just for like 25 years. It just kind of paved everything. It put me to sleep. I don't think I went a day. I would go a day without having a few glasses of wine, 1 to 3 glasses of wine a night, and then whatever. So for me, it just got to a point, and I adopted a baby 10 years ago from birth, and that has been by far the most extraordinary experience of my life, and wildly, wildly challenging for so many reasons. So a lot of them just have to do with me as a human and my experiences, and as the youngest child, and my desire to do things differently than my parents. But also I had infertility for 8 years, so that was also really tricky. And so finally having a baby, and then her having her own set of needs, and she's a very intensely vocal person, and I think she feels pretty safe with me, so she really is herself, and sometimes it's really it's challenging, and then it's beautiful, just because we work through a lot of that stuff that she's got, that I've got, and then coming out on the other side is really cool. But it's almost like we have to do that every day too, which is kind of like sobriety. You have to choose it.
Hmm.
And what's really cool, I just can't believe that I haven't had a hangover in over 3 years.
I was gonna ask you that too. There's so much stuff coming up for me too, because you just mentioned you said that what you grew up with in your family, 'cause my parents were both alcoholics. They're not with us anymore.
Okay.
But when I hear people's story of sobriety, I'm like, "Gosh, I wish that they'd have done that." I wish, they were my parents, and, we all have our relationship with our families. It can be tough at times, and I think it just added more stress to our family with them both being alcoholics, and I'm like, "Man," because they did so many great things, I just wish that they could have gotten sober. So again, kudos to you for being able to do it,
Yeah.
and also being a parent too. That's amazing.
I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. Like as I was pushing 50, I was like, this is not nothing. Menopause is this thing that we all shuddered to even think about. Like, well, it won't happen to me, or this thing, you put on a muumuu and go inside for 8 years and you come back, you know what I mean? Like, or you go and you come back out 8 years later in a muumuu.
Yeah.
I don't know. But this idea of what havoc it wreaks on your brain, and everything is a little harder. And um, the idea, and then my daughter was sometimes having a hard time, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't, and it wasn't working for me anymore. It just didn't work the same way. And I thought, like, if I continue this, it'll be detrimental for everybody.
Yeah.
And I found like a whole community of people, which is so crazy. The amount of amazing people that I've met, a lot of them in this industry. Like, somebody will be like, oh, I have this amount, I have 20 years, I have this. And you're just like, oh, hi. And then you immediately like sort of know this thing about each other, like you're really
Yeah.
connected. And it feels like a whole community of just magic.
That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on that, and being a mom. I mean, those are 2 huge things that you've had come up in the last few years. That's just wonderful. So
Yeah.
happy for you.
You're a dad too, so you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I kind of became an instant parent myself. My 2 older kids I adopted in my previous marriage. My ex-wife had 2 kids that were at
Okay.
the time, they were 3 and 4, and I loved them. I thought they were great kids. So eventually I adopted them. But it's a transition for sure. It's like, how did we for me, it was like, how did I live my life without kids? Because I was kinda late to the game. When
Yeah.
when I officially adopted them was 7 years into my relationship with them, but but prior to that, um, I was in my late 30s, and so many people start their families, like, in their 20s, and so it
Right.
was How was that for you to become a parent at an old
At an advanced age. I mean, now I think I was so young. I was 42 when Zoe was born. But, yeah, I mean, I think the same thing, Jim. I'm like, "What was I doing for 20 years?" And I think I was just, I remember I got divorced from my first husband when I was 33, and I spent 3 years just like, "Freedom, da ba da ba." Like, I think I had gone straight from, like, home to school to this relationship with someone that felt, like I didn't feel like I could be myself in. Um which is, you know, a lot of that is me, it's just whatever I was so young, got married when I was 27, we were together from the time I was 23. And then no, I think we broke up when I was 30. So we were together for 7 years right after high school, we were or college. And then from 30 to 33, I was like and working and doing movie. That was also when my movie career kind of went cuckoo. So I was doing some stuff in a bunch of different places and London. I worked a lot in London and the Isle of Man and just, I mean, crazy. It was fun. And that, yeah, that's the main thing is what was I doing? What was I doing?
Right.
And now it's been, I will say, like, again, like I have a 10-year-old and I'm 50 and I still have to go do a lot of stuff. I have to leave town a lot. And my ex and I parent together. We don't live together, but we're still I feel so lucky because 'cause we're so on the same page about so many things, and we can be honest with each other, and he's great when I go out of town. I take her a little bit more of the time when I'm here, but he's always been just very good with her, good with taking over, and then we travel together, so it's easier, but it's really hard to be gone.
Yeah, well, that's great. It's so important too, I think, for the parents to be, even if they're not
I know.
living together, to, I had to kind of learn the hard way when I got divorced of how to navigate that because we have the two older ones and then we had one biological kid together. And so, I'm remarried now. And so it's a whole nother set of, but I'm so thankful for it too, that we're able
Yeah.
my ex and I don't have the kind of, relationship that you guys sound like you have, so kudos to you for that, that's wonderful.
How old is your youngest?
Will be 20 this summer. So,
Okay.
yeah, um, but yeah, and it's all good. So has she been able to see some of your movies? 'Cause, I guess most of your movies are okay for kids, but has she has she
She
maybe like
saw yeah, she saw, the first one she saw, I think, was Home Alone 4, and she thought that was fun. She saw Galaxy Quest, and she really liked that, and then she's seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Josie and the Pussycats. She's seen
Mhm,
those,
yeah.
but no dodgeball or no,
Do you tell her, do you give her and I guess she's different ages when she saw those. Do you give her a heads up, "Now here's a mommy movie," or do you surprise her that, "Oh, that's
no,
you?"
I make her she knows. I'm
Now
like,
I
"We're
wanted to
gonna
go back
watch
to
this," and she's
what
like, no, I don't want to." I'm like, "We're gonna do it." And then she saw Josie and the Pussycats, and she watched it. She's like, "I wanna watch it again right away."
so tell me about your interactions, relationship with Tim Burton.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very lucky. There was a girl who was supposed to be in Big Fish, and then they had to postpone shooting because of some major flooding and on the locations. So then she wasn't available, and so I got to audition and went down there, and I just loved working with him. And you get the feeling that he sees the whole thing in his head before he shoots it,
Mm.
kind of even what you're going to do. But at the same time, he just kind of lays back and lets you do it. It's when you work with really, really talented people like him, it's so easy. It's just so easy, and everyone's having, like, a great time, and he's just generous and laughs and is a delight. And then when Charlie came around, my manager was like, "What about Missy for this?" And he was like, "Oh, Missy isn't right for it," or I don't know. And then they called, like, 2 weeks later and was like, "Is Missy still available?" And then I came out right away. It was this larger than life experience to be on at Pinewood Studios. We were on 16 sound stages. It was this Dick Zanuck. It was like a giant production, and Tim came and was like, "I want you to go," and then they built that whole Chocolate River set with every single tree you saw, they had a version of it that you could, in fact, eat. So he's like, anything you want, you just go to it. We'll come and pick you up there.
Was there any pressure for him or for the cast to, because the previous, Willy Wonka was an iconic movie that we grew up with. Was there did you guys feel any pressure to make sure that that you upheld it with the sort of reimagining of it?
Well, interestingly enough, like Roald Dahl never liked the first one. So that's why they called it Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory instead of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And so there was so much about that going on. Like he was dead, obviously, at this point, Roald Dahl, but his widow was there. And so she was like, this is great. And then I think that was just majorly restructured. And I think they were trying not to be exactly the same. Even though I get told all the time, which one people like the best. I really like the original one better. And I'm like, okay, or, some people really like this one too. But
they were both dark, which I guess comes from the original book. But I heard another version of why it was called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and it wasn't before, because when the first one was made, we were in Vietnam. And of course, everybody was talking about Charlie this and Charlie that, which was wrong. And so that was the other reason they called it Willy Wonka, because of the name Charlie was in the news and all of that. But it was fun because they were both dark films, but in different ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they brought that whole thing within his dad. That wasn't in the first one, was it?
Right. No.
The whole thing where he goes and sees his dad, who's the dentist.
Yeah.
A little backstory.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved that book. That was a book that I read when I was a kid a few times. And I could see, I didn't really like the first movie because it scared me at the time when I saw it. And now, I haven't seen it in a really long time, but I was really afraid. But I remember reading it and just that feeling of Charlie in the bed with his grandparents.
Yeah.
And them and him having that $1, the ridiculous poverty that they were in, sharing like it was just the dad putting caps on toothpaste.
Well, I went back and watched some of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, your scene specifically, but I loved how you played Mrs. Beauregard because she was very familiar in terms of the community that maybe we grew up in. Switching back over to Big Fish, how did you enjoy working with Ewan McGregor?
He's a delight, a sweet, sweet, wonderful man. I didn't spend an enormous amount of time with him, but he's just the kindest. What was interesting, though, is I worked with Loudon Wainwright, who's an amazing musician and actor. And we had some rain, too, so I spent a lot of time with The Giant, with Steve Buscemi, and Loudon Wainwright. We're sort of this posse. We go see movies together and go hear music together. So that was kind of crazy. And then I remember Mr. Rogers died, so Loudon Wainwright wrote this song about the day Fred Rogers died. And I don't know if he ever even put it out there, but he gave me a copy of it. Wow. And it's one of the songs that I listen to all the time.
I felt like your role in Gone Girl, Ellen Abbott, came from a sort of Southern roots. Can you talk a little bit about that character?
Yes, I will say, playing like a news character as someone it's in my wheelhouse of characters. I remember doing Josie the Pussycats, and I remember Alan Cumming saying, you can be as big as you want as long as it's real. And I think that's really, really true. There are obviously larger than life people out there. And it was really based on Nancy Grace, who we all knew and we all know exactly who, everything is about murder. She's kind of amazing. And I called her a badass. And I ended up interviewing her afterwards. But that was interesting to work with David Fincher, who, every scene you do over and over again, over and over and over again. Like even me just walking to the house and saying hello.
How was that for you? Because I've heard people talking about Kubrick, where on the one hand, it's like, oh, that's crazy. But then some people are like, yeah, but other directors, the clock's ticking and you only get 1 or 2 takes and you get to explore it. Did you have that feeling too? Did you really get to as an actor, try a lot of different stuff?
I feel like, yes, I did. But the type of character that I played, yes, I do. I think that I did a play with a guy named Tom Noonan, who's recently passed away, and he would make us do the same thing. And we would do these scenes over and over and over again. And we did this play in real time, and it was black box. And what ends up happening is you do it, you get frustrated, you start getting even more frustrated, and then you're just like, whatever. And then you're like, well, fuck this guy. And then all of a sudden, there's just something else comes out, something new that wouldn't have come out before. Because no matter how like in the moment you want to be, it's really hard to be exactly 100% present. And I think it does create a presence. Now, my character was in a slightly different boat because I wasn't having these huge scenes with people where I wasn't interviewing them. And then I worked a lot by myself.
I was going to ask you that because it's been a while since I've seen that, but you definitely had some scenes with the other actors, but most of your role was to camera, right? I mean,
yeah, I have a scene where I go meet Ben Affleck's character at the house, and then I'm with the two of them.
Right.
And that's the only scene with people that I have. And then there's a couple times on them talking on camera by myself. And then there's one time where I'm having an argument or, with Tyler Perry.
Yeah.
Who I ended up working with Tyler Perry right after that, like a year later. And Tyler Perry is one or two takes and then boom, you're on. I mean, sometimes just one. Like, so you have to.
Right.
That's the thing that was also so crazy to me after being trained in the theater. And then, all the amounts of rehearsals that you do and you going through your character and what are you saying, that so many times when I really started working, I was doing guest spots on shows and you don't rehearse ever. Sometimes they just turn, it's like, I did one where I didn't even meet the director. It was just like, all right, let's just do it. And then they came out like 3 takes later and was like, okay, how about if we just do it this way? So you kind of just have to come in with it being ready.
Right. So was that, as an actor, it sounds like that's a much different experience doing TV than it is feature films. I'm sure there's exceptions, but is TV just a lot faster than films typically?
Not really. I feel like TV is now the newer film. Like I'm working on a show called Sticks for Apple TV right now. And there's a lot of, it feels more like working on a film. Whereas most of the films, and this is specifically for me, that I do are lower budget. And so we're getting through, like I did this movie called For Worse, and we were getting through 13 pages a day and filming the whole thing in like 12 days or 20 days, or, it's just a much shorter thing. Although I did do a movie with the South Park guys, and that one was very interesting. We filmed it at the end of 2024, right before the elections, and still hasn't come out. And I'm very curious to see. We were supposed to do reshoots early this year, but it's behind the scenes at like a living history museum. So there's like the mayor and the town crier and the, printmaker and the tanner and I play the candle maker. But we filmed that one here at a ranch in Santa Clarita. And I mean, that was months of shooting. When we started, they hadn't even finished the movie.
Wow.
In typical Trey Parker, Matt Stone fashion.
I want to ask you about the artist because that was kind of a departure too. And with the Oscars I still remember you up on that stage, I think in a beautiful blue dress. How was that going through the whole gamut of, because I think it was a foreign production. Was it a French production or an American production?
It was a French production. They had nobody could have ever guessed that was just an audition I had. I got there, silent movie. There's a script. It's very thin because there's no words. I came to the place, there was nobody out there. And I really thought, I almost left at one point because I was like, I don't know if anybody's here. And then I went in the room and it was like the French director was there. Hello. And they had me do the scene and I started doing it like, and they were like, no, you can talk, but you just have to, we won't record the dialogue. That was funny. And then I went to set thinking I was playing one character, but they ended up putting me in a different character, but I don't know that they ever told me that it was a different character, but it didn't really matter because there were no lines, except for I had to do a Shakespearean monologue. Because he's like, Missi, maybe you're doing the Romeo and Juliet monologue, the Juliet monologue. And I was like, and that was like after lunch. And I was like, well, I don't have the Juliet in my back pocket. So here I'm doing a silent movie and I have to quickly memorize the Oh Romeo monologue.
When you saw the finished film, were you shocked, surprised? How was your response to it when you first saw it put together?
I mean, it was so It was fun, and when we would I remember when we first started filming, I was there the first day, I think, and Jean Dujardin and I were, because I was playing this actress in a film with him, and I'm in the back of the plane, and I'm holding someone's holding the dog, and and we're in a car going down the street, and they actually put on the loudspeakers that music.
Huh.
The like almost vaudevillian music, like, as we were going, and it was really cool to be in the car as we're filming and just hearing this music as you've got the camera here, but they're not recording any of it. So it was incredible. And then nobody thought this movie was gonna do anything. And then I heard it got into Cannes, and I just happened to go with my friend because I was like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna be in a movie that goes to Cannes. Let's go. And my friend and I went, and they gave us these beautiful dresses, and someone did our hair, but they weren't part of the movie. And so when we showed up at the red carpet, I showed up in this beautiful black dress with my hair all, and the director didn't even really recognize me because he'd never seen me in blonde hair. And I was like, no, I'm in the movie. And then they took us down the red carpet like we were, like, it was like the cinematographer, the director, writer, the two stars, and the producer and me. But I was in the middle because I was the tallest and wearing shoes. It looked like I was like the third lead in the movie or something. And then you go down together as this group, and then we go to we stand at the top of the stairs, and everyone's clapping, the photographers are all in tuxedos. It's crazy. And then when you get in the room, everyone's clapping before it even starts, and then we watch the movie, and then the end is over, and they're clapping for 20 minutes. And at one point, we're just all doing like little tap things, and then I knew it won Cannes, and then Harvey Weinstein bought it. Crazy interesting to watch him work the award circuit. Like, he worked it. He worked every single one of the members of that academy. He had them all. He had their numbers, their thing. He had a person that he called every, there's this woman, I think he called her, all hours of the day. I don't think he really slept. Then we ended up going to the Oscars, and I wasn't invited, but then I got to go through James Cameron's wife. Susie Cameron has this thing called the red carpet green dress. It's like a competition for someone to make a green dress. And so they gave me a ticket, and I went and got to go on stage at the Oscars.
That was very fun to see Missy Pyle up there on the
I
Oscars.
know, it's pretty cool.
Who knew that there was all that chaos in the background, though, to see
Yeah.
that? Like, oh, wow, look, everybody's so, together.
And then I wasn't invited to any parties. I never got a +1. So I did go to the after party for the artist, because I was in it, and I saw Harvey Weinstein, and I'll never forget this. This is, 2011, 12. And he's like, you looked great up there. You look like you were supposed to be up there. And then he's like, why don't you come sit at my table? And I was like, okay. And I had heard stories about him being creepy, which is interesting because it's like you heard these stories, but nobody did anything. And then I went to the table, and there was like a couple of really skinny looking, like emaciated, beautiful young women there, but like looking sad. And then I sat down, and I was like, and then my friend who was the costume designer was holding the Oscar and said, do you want to come with me to the Vanity Fair party? Because this will get us in. And I was like, yes. So I went with him, and then I never saw him again. Harvey.
Wow. Kind of on the subject, but what's the weirdest audition that you've ever had?
The weirdest. I mean, I would say the only thing that's coming to my mind is that there was this one guy in the first movies that I ever did who we had a rehearsal at his apartment, and I was playing his girlfriend. And the woman who was the first AD was like, I have to go. I'm so sorry. Do you mind doing this by yourself? And again, yeah. And I was like, I was 22, and I was like, okay, sure. And then he was like, we should probably practice the kissing scene. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, we fully made out, and then it was like, okay, bye. I mean, it was just so unprofessional, so like, I don't know what to do. Ugh.
Wow. Did you get the part?
I was already playing the part. That was actually a
rehearsal.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember any crazy auditions.
Was there a film that surprised you at its success?
I mean, obviously The Artist would be the one that surprised me at its success. I did a lot of movies that I was surprised weren't successful.
Well, that was my next question, is that.
Josie the Pussycats I thought was gonna be the greatest movie ever, and it ended up and it's still like a sleeper hit. I think it's really good. But, it's fun to watch. Like, it's very in that genre, and it is, like, it's almost 30 years old.
Yeah.
20
What about, what's the favorite role you've ever had?
And that's such a hard question. I would say, um, that there are things about different movies that I really liked, and I would say, like, for Galaxy Quest was such an extraordinary experience and playing that character and being with all those people, and that was so cool. And then I did this David E. Kelley TV show that got canceled, but I got to play this character named Amanda Pontel, and she was sort of like someone that I know really well who is constantly offending people, but doesn't mean to, but is really trying to be a good person, but can't. And that was
That's Wedding Planners,
The Wedding Bells, yeah. And that
Right.
got canceled.
Mhm.
But I loved the way that it was going. Like, I was just a guest star, and then they made me a series regular, and I felt David was writing really cool stuff for me to do, and I worked with him one more time, but I haven't worked with him since, which is in my bucket list. But and then, I would say I did a TV show called Why the Last Man on Hulu, and that was just extraordinary. I got to play this really multi-layered character who she starts out as like a cop, cult leader, and then you kinda find out who she really is.
Do you have a go-to movie or movies that you will watch? If you catch it and it's on, you'll just start watching it again?
That would be like The Princess Bride is
Mm.
one of my favorites, and then I would say that I also really love Children of Men, like, is such a good movie. Any of the old comedies, like, I'll watch, like, I just watched Young Frankenstein, but
Oh
again,
god.
anything with Catherine
Yeah.
O'Hara. Yeah,
Yeah. She was amazing.
yeah.
I felt like you should have been in some of those movies, I could totally have seen you in Best in Show or
Yeah.
one of those. Yeah, that's an
I
amazing.
auditioned for one of them, and I didn't get it.
Is there a role that you auditioned for that you were surprised that you got, that maybe you thought the audition went really bad and it was like, "Oh, okay, great."
I auditioned for this one character on Heroes, and I remember walking into the room and thinking, like, all the young girls there were so much younger than me, and I just was like, "There's no way I'm getting this part." And meanwhile, I was only, like, probably 33 at the time. Like, I wasn't old. But I just was like, "There's," and then they were like, "You got the part." And I was like, "Really?" Because it was also like a babe, and I don't normally play those characters. So that was fun. There was another one that was written for me, which was I went to the table read of Bridesmaids, and I was playing, like, the main bridesmaid. And then I'll never forget Kristen Wiig and Andy Mumala who wrote it. They were like, "We wrote this part for you because you give really good bitch face." And I was like, "Amazing. So fun." And then it didn't get made for a couple years, and then when they did make it, I had a couple of auditions, but I didn't get the part. And then
Right.
it ended up being, like, the biggest female comedy of all time.
I could have seen you in that too, you know? I saw the trailer for Four Worse, and that's written, directed, and starring your co-star,
Amy
right?
Landecker, yes, but yeah, it's a great movie. It's really well done. We shot that one in 13 days, and we had these incredible Amy's an incredible director. She's super fun, and her husband is Bradley Whitford, who is just a dreamboat, and the two of them are so crazy about each other that it's gross. You're just like, "Ugh, get a room, blech." And he was there for every day of the shoot and would come in and give us, like, funny lines. Like, he's the one who there's this one thing where she puts something on, and I'm like, "Ew, what are you going to a quinceañera? Take that off." And then I got to do a ton of improv.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
so
great. And I saw that the budget, it was incredibly low, but to see the trailer, you'd never know. I mean, it looks like a
Is
couple $1,000,000 movie. All right, are you ready for a lightning round?
is anyone ever ready for a lightning round, Jim?
Not at
Let's go.
all.
Let's go.
Here's the most basic, coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, but
Okay.
I really like tea.
What's your favorite hobby outside of acting?
Playing music.
Oh, 'cause you've been in a band, you're in a couple bands over years, right?
Just playing, it's my favorite.
Do you read your own reviews?
Yeah, but, I haven't been reviewed that much.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
We Belong by Pat Benatar.
Nice. If you weren't acting, what do you think you'd be doing?
I might work in, like, addiction recovery,
Oh, okay.
or
Very
I'd be, I also would be or I would be, like, a nurse.
Who cracks you up?
My friend Brooke Dillman makes me laugh. My friend John Hartmere makes me laugh. I have my friends. I have some, like, annoyingly funny friends.
I'm gonna maybe cut that one because we kind of talked about it. I was gonna say, what's the most underrated film you've been in?
I mean, 4 Worst at this point. It's so good. It is so good. It's so funny. It makes you laugh the whole time through.
Who were you surprised to discover as a fan of your work?
Oh, Viggo Mortensen, when I did a movie with him. He was like, love Galaxy Quest. We watch it
That's
every
awesome.
year on Christmas Day. And I was like, I'm in love with you too.
If you could go back in time for a day to any era, where and when would you go?
God, maybe ancient Rome.
Okay.
I just would like to see what's going on back there. I like to see what's really going on underneath all those ruins and whatnot.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it. What's a role the most fans recognize you for?
I would say it's a 4-way tie between Miss Pasternak from 2.5 Men, Galaxy Quest, Dodgeball, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
What can we look for coming out? We've talked a little bit about this, but what can we watch for Missy PYLE coming up in the next coming months and year?
Yeah, so I'm in this movie with RuPaul that comes out in April. I was Drag Queens on a Train. Now it's something else, but it is Drag Queens on a Train. And Parnell is in it. And my scenes are with Parnell. So that you have to look for that. And then I did a TV show on Amazon called Sterling Point. I play the mom in a young adult show by the girl Megan Park, who wrote My Old Ass and some other things. It's incredible. She's an amazing writer. Again, maybe this Trey Parker Matt Stone movie that doesn't have a title. And then The Life and Deaths of Wilson Shedd. I have a couple episodes of this Owen Wilson TV show called Stick. Maybe a couple other movies. I'm trying to remember, but that's about it.
Well, Missy PYLE, my longtime friend, and thank you so much.
I'm going to a city near you with my band Smith and Pyle.
All right.
Our first 15 years, yeah, of course. Thank you, Jen. Thanks for asking me. Pleasure.
Thank you, Missy.
Thank you, Jen.